Welcome to our deep dive into Richard Carlson's Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Oh, classic.
You've handed us a mountain of wisdom, and it's a classic for a reason. It seems like you're looking for ways to manage stress
Right.
and find a little more peace in life. And that's exactly what we're here to do today.
Get ready for some actionable strategies.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe a few relatable stories.
Sounds good.
That'll make you chuckle along the way.
It's fascinating how Carlson approaches peace. It's not about becoming passive or giving up. It's more about understanding that sometimes our reactions to the small stuff create way more stress than the things themselves.
That's so true. It's like when you spill your coffee first thing in the morning. It's annoying, sure, but does it really ruin your entire day?
Right.
Probably not.
Exactly. Carlson gives us 100 strategies to help us see things differently, but I think he really hits the nail on the head with his idea of making peace with imperfection. That's strategy. #2, right? Yes. And I think we can all relate to that. Like, think about a disorganized closet. Do you spend all your time stressing about the mess? Or do you accept that maybe it's a work in progress and focus on enjoying the parts that are organized? How does shifting your perspective like that make you feel?
I think that's a great question for our listener to think about. And, it's interesting because a lot of us think that in order to achieve great things, we need to be, super driven and maybe even a little stressed. But Carlson's strategy, #3, directly challenges that assumption.
So you're saying that maybe being relaxed can actually help you get more done.
That's exactly what Carlson is suggesting. He argues that fear and anxiety can really drain our energy and stifle our creativity. It's like they block us from reaching our full potential.
Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever felt so worried about something that you couldn't focus or get anything done? I know I have.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there. And speaking of getting caught up in negative thoughts, Carlson warns us about something he calls the snowball effect. That's strategy #4. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with one little worry, and suddenly your mind is racing with everything you have to do the next day? It's like a runaway train of anxiety.
Ugh, yes. I hate when that happens. What does Carlson suggest we do about it?
He has a really simple but effective technique. When you notice that snowball starting to roll, just say to yourself, "Whew, there I go again." It's like catching yourself in the act and gently interrupting that pattern of negative thinking.
That's such a great tip.
Yeah.
It's amazing how a simple shift in perspective can make such a big difference. And speaking of perspective, Carlson's strategy, #5 about developing compassion for others, really resonated with me.
Yeah.
As it's really about Carlson's point is that when we make an effort to understand where other people are coming from, it can help us see our own problems in a new light. He gives the example of feeling annoyed by, like a slow postal worker. But what if we took a moment to imagine what their day might be like? Maybe they're dealing with a difficult situation or just having a bad day. It helps us realize that our frustration might be pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. And that brings us to one of my favorite strategies, strategy #10. Learn to live in the present moment. It's so easy to get caught up dwelling on the past or worrying about the future that we forget to appreciate the beauty and joy of what's happening right now.
That reminds me of that famous John Lennon quote, "Life is what's happening while we're busy making other plans." When we're constantly focused on what's not happening, we miss out on all the good stuff that's right in front of us.
Carlson takes this idea even further with a thought-provoking exercise and strategy, #11. He asks us to imagine that everyone we meet is enlightened, except for us. What if everyone is here to teach us something?
Wow, that's a powerful idea. It's like looking at every interaction as an opportunity for learning and growth.
Exactly. Suddenly, that frustrating encounter with a rude cashier becomes less about their behavior and more about what we can learn from it.
It's almost like becoming an anthropologist,
Yeah.
observing and trying to understand different cultures and behaviors without judgment.
Carlson actually dedicates a whole strategy to that. Strategy #43, become an anthropologist. He talks about observing a punk rocker at the mall and how it led him to shift his own perspective.
It's about recognizing that everyone has a unique story and a set of experiences that have shaped who they are. Instead of jumping to judgments, we can choose to approach others with curiosity and a genuine desire to understand their world.
And that ties in nicely with strategy #44. Understand separate realities. We all experience the world through our own unique lens, shaped by our beliefs, experiences, and values. What might seem perfectly reasonable to us could be interpreted completely differently by someone else.
It's so important to remember that when we're interacting with others. And speaking of gaining perspective, I love strategy #16. Ask yourself, will this matter a year from now? It's such a simple but powerful question for putting everyday challenges into perspective.
It's like hitting the fast forward button and seeing the situation from a distance. Suddenly that spilled coffee or missed deadline doesn't seem quite so catastrophic, does it?
Not at all. And another one that I find really helpful is strategy #22. Repeat to yourself, life isn't an emergency. It's like a mantra for calming down and regaining control when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Carlson shares the example of a homemaker who felt constantly stressed because she couldn't keep her house perfectly clean.
Oh, wow.
She was putting so much pressure on herself that it was affecting her health. It's a good reminder that a lot of the pressure we feel is self-created.
Mm.
We set these unrealistic expectations for ourselves, and then we beat ourselves up when we can't meet them.
It's so true. We've got to give ourselves a break sometimes. You know, another strategy that really spoke to me is strategy #37. Choose being kind over being right. It's so tempting to correct others, especially when we know we're right.
Right.
But,
But as Carlson points out, is winning an argument really worth it if it leaves everyone feeling hurt and resentful? Choosing kindness over being right can be a powerful way to build stronger relationships and create a more positive environment.
he tells a funny story about how his wife gracefully let him take credit for her business idea.
Oh.
That's a perfect example of how putting kindness first can lead to a win-win situation.
And it's important to remember that being kind doesn't mean we have to sacrifice our own values or beliefs.
Exactly. It's about approaching disagreements with respect and understanding, even when we see things differently. Now, one of the most profound strategies in the book, in my opinion, is strategy #98. Look for the extraordinary in the ordinary. Carlson uses the story of two bricklayers to illustrate this concept.
Oh, yes.
One bricklayer is miserable, complaining about his tedious work.
Right.
But the other sees himself as a craftsman, building a beautiful cathedral.
It's a powerful reminder that our perspective shapes our experience of life. We can choose to focus on the negative and mundane, or we can actively search for beauty and wonder in everyday moments. What a difference that makes.
And it's like a muscle we can strengthen with practice. The more we intentionally look for the extraordinary, the more we'll find it. It's about training our brains to see the world through a different lens.
Okay, so I know this one might sound a little intense, but strategy #21 really made me think. Carlson asks us to imagine yourself at your own funeral.
Okay, that one's a little intriguing. What does he mean by that?
I know it sounds a bit morbid, but hear me out. It's actually a really effective way to gain perspective on what truly matters in life. When we imagine ourselves at the end of our lives looking back, what are we going to regret? It's probably not the things we stressed about, but rather the moments we missed out on because we were too busy sweating the small stuff.
That's such a good point. It really makes you think about your priorities.
And it leads us to another powerful strategy, strategy #17. Surrender to the fact that life isn't fair, it's a tough pill to swallow, but recognizing this truth can be incredibly liberating.
Because when we're constantly fighting against reality, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. It's like expecting the universe to bend to our will, which, let's face it, isn't very likely.
Exactly. So instead of wasting our energy complaining about what's wrong, Carlson suggests we focus on making the most of the hand we've been dealt. That means shifting our energy from complaining to finding solutions and creating positive change.
You know, that reminds me of strategy #6. Remind yourself that when you die, your in-basket won't be empty. It's a sobering thought, but it highlights how pointless it is to try to get absolutely everything done.
Because there will always be more to do. It's the nature of life. So instead of constantly striving for some elusive finish line, what if we focused on enjoying the process? Carlson suggests we reframe our thinking about our to-do lists. Instead of seeing them as burdens, we can view them as signs that our time is valuable and in demand.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And now, shifting gears a bit, I think strategy #15 can have a huge positive impact on our relationships.
Right.
It's about taking the initiative to repair broken connections, be the first one to act loving or reach out, even if it's difficult.
Carlson tells a heartwarming story about a woman who hadn't spoken to her son in years because of a disagreement.
Wow.
She was waiting for him to apologize, but she finally realized that holding on to that resentment was only hurting her, so she decided to reach out to him first.
Good for her.
And to her surprise, he was incredibly receptive. They were both able to apologize and mend their relationship.
That's so beautiful. It's a powerful reminder that holding on to anger and resentment only hurts us in the long run. And when we're willing to be the bigger person, we open the door for healing and forgiveness.
Speaking of letting go, strategy #7 is a game changer for communication. Don't interrupt others or finish their sentences. It's about truly listening to what someone is saying, without trying to rush them along or jump in with our own thoughts.
It's so true. When we're constantly interrupting or finishing someone's sentences, we're not really listening. We're just waiting for our turn to talk. And honestly, it's exhausting.
Carlson makes a great point about how much mental energy it takes to keep track of both our own thoughts and the thoughts of the person we're interrupting. When we can practice the art of patient listening, we create a more relaxed and respectful environment for communication.
And we might actually learn something new in the process.
Absolutely. Carlson suggests that we approach conversations as opportunities to connect with another human being, not as competitions for airtime.
Now, this next strategy might be a bit of a wake-up call for some of us. It challenges a deeply ingrained belief. Strategy #19, lower your tolerance to stress. We often admire people who can handle a ton of stress, as if it's a badge of honor.
But Carlson argues that constantly pushing ourselves to tolerate more and more stress is a recipe for burnout. When we're always operating at a high level of stress, it affects every aspect of our lives. Our physical health, our relationships, our creativity, and even our ability to think clearly.
It's like driving a car with the emergency brake on. You might eventually get to your destination, but it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Carlson wants us to rethink our definition of success. What if true success is about living a balanced and joyful life, rather than constantly striving and pushing ourselves to the limit?
I love that.
Okay.
Here's a strategy I'm definitely going to try. Strategy #20. Once a week, write a heartfelt letter to someone you love. It's such a simple but powerful way to express gratitude and strengthen our connections with the people who matter most.
Carlson suggests writing the letter as if it were the last one you'd ever write. What would you want to say? What are you grateful for? What do you love about this person? It's a beautiful way to shift our focus from what's wrong to what's right in our lives.
It's a gift that the recipient will cherish for years to come.
It's also a great way to practice gratitude, which Carlson emphasizes throughout the book. In strategy #24, he suggests spending a moment each day thinking of someone we want to thank.
Because when we focus on what we're grateful for, it shifts our perspective and we start to see all the abundance in our lives. It's like training our brains to see the world through a more positive lens.
Exactly. And speaking of shifting perspective, strategy #32 can be a bit of a wake-up call. It's called Life is a Test. It is only a test.
Okay, that was a little intriguing. What does he mean by that?
It's about taking a step back and remembering that the challenges we face are opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing obstacles as roadblocks, we can choose to view them as opportunities to learn and overcome.
So we can reframe our perspective and turn a stressful situation into a valuable learning experience.
Exactly. And that leads us to another really important strategy. Strategy #33. Praise and blame are all the same. It reminds us that we can't please everyone all the time, and that's okay.
It's about letting go of that need for external validation and realizing that everyone has their own opinions and perspectives.
Right. When we're always seeking approval, we're giving away our power and letting other people's opinions dictate our worth. Carlson encourages us to focus on living a life that aligns with our own values and beliefs, regardless of what others think.
That's such a powerful idea. It frees us from that constant need to seek approval and helps us live more authentically.
So how do we cultivate this inner peace and resilience? One way is through strategy #34, practicing random acts of kindness.
I love that. When we focus on making a positive impact on the world, it shifts our attention away from our own problems and helps us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
It's like a ripple effect. One small act of kindness can inspire countless others and make the world a more loving and compassionate place.
And it doesn't have to be anything grand or elaborate. It could be as simple as holding the door open for someone, offering a genuine compliment, or donating to a cause we care about.
Exactly. Carlson encourages us to find small ways to make a difference every day. It's about developing a mindset of generosity and compassion.
Okay, this next one. Strategy #35. Look beyond behavior can be a bit challenging, especially for those of us who like to be in control. It's about recognizing that people's actions are often a reflection of their own internal struggles, rather than a personal attack on us.
Carlson uses the example of a teenager acting out. Instead of getting caught up in the drama of their behavior, he suggests trying to see the scared and insecure child underneath.
It's about having compassion and understanding, even when it's difficult.
Because when we can look beyond the surface behavior, we can often see the pain and fear that's driving it. That can help us respond with more empathy and kindness rather than anger and judgment.
That reminds me of strategy hashtag 36, see the innocence. It's about remembering that most people are doing the best they can with the tools and resources they have.
Carlson tells this funny story about how he used to get so annoyed by a slow postal worker. But then he realized that maybe the postal worker was having a bad day, or maybe he just didn't enjoy his job. It helped him shift his perspective and see the situation with more compassion.
It's a good reminder that we don't always know what's going on in other people's lives, so it's best to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely. And when we can see the innocence in others, it helps us let go of our own judgments and frustrations.
This next strategy is so important for communication. Strategy, hashtag 28. Seek first to understand. It's about putting aside our own agendas and truly listening to what the other person is trying to say.
Carlson points out that most of us are so focused on getting our own point across that we don't really hear what the other person is saying. It's like we're playing a game of conversational tennis, just waiting for our turn to hit the ball back.
You're so right. And that can make it really hard to truly connect with someone.
But when we can slow down and really listen, it creates a space for understanding and connection. And that can actually help de-escalate conflict before it even starts.
Carlson encourages us to ask clarifying questions and really try to see the world from the other person's perspective.
When we feel heard and understood, it creates a sense of safety and trust. And that's the foundation for healthy communication and strong relationships.
That makes me think of strategy, hashtag 30. Choose your battles wisely.
Right.
We have to recognize that not every disagreement is worth fighting over.
Right. If we're constantly battling over every little thing, it creates so much unnecessary stress and conflict. Carlson suggests we ask ourselves, is this really worth getting upset about? Will this matter a year from now? If the answer is no, then it's probably best to let it go.
It's about prioritizing our peace of mind and focusing our energy on the things that truly matter. Now, this next strategy, hashtag 31, might be helpful for those of us who tend to get stuck in negative thought patterns. It's called Become Aware of Your Moods and Don't Allow Yourself to be Fooled by the Low Ones.
It's about recognizing that our moods are temporary and that they don't always reflect reality. When we're feeling down, it's easy to believe that everything is bad and that it's always going to be that way.
I know exactly what you mean.
Right.
It's like those negative thoughts take over, and you forget that things can and do get better.
Exactly. Carlson suggests that we acknowledge our feelings without judgment, but don't let them dictate our actions or beliefs. He reminds us that this too shall pass. Our moods are like the weather. They change constantly.
So instead of resisting those down moods, we can practice acceptance and self-compassion. We can remind ourselves that things will get better.
Now, this next strategy might seem a little counterintuitive, but I think it's so important in our constantly stimulated world. Strategy, hashtag 18, is allow yourself to be bored.
Wait, you're telling me that being bored is actually a good thing?
Hear me out. We're constantly bombarded with information and distractions, so it can be incredibly difficult to quiet our minds and connect with ourselves. Carlson suggests that we actually schedule in some unstructured downtime every day, just to be without any agenda or goals.
It could be something as simple as taking a walk in nature, listening to music, or just sitting quietly and observing our surroundings.
Exactly. When we allow ourselves to be bored, it creates space for creativity and inspiration to emerge. It's like giving our minds a chance to wander and make new connections.
It's so interesting. I never thought about boredom that way. It seems like a lot of these strategies are about creating space for ourselves, both mentally and emotionally.
That's a great observation. And speaking of creating space, strategy, hashtag 26, set aside quiet time every day, is essential for finding inner peace.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life and forget to nurture our own souls.
I've been trying to incorporate more quiet time into my own life. Even if it's just for a few minutes each day, it could be time for meditation, journaling, reading, or simply just being present in the moment.
It's about creating a sanctuary for ourselves, where we can reconnect with our inner selves and recharge our batteries. We have to prioritize our own well-being, and those quiet moments are so important for that.
Okay, this next one is really creative. Strategy, hashtag 27, is to imagine the people in your life as tiny infants and as 100-year-old adults. It's about cultivating compassion and understanding for the people who drive us crazy.
When we're feeling irritated or frustrated with someone, Carlson suggests we try to imagine them as a helpless infant, and then as a wise elder. It's such a powerful way to shift our perspective and remember that everyone is on their own unique journey.
That's a really cool visualization. It helps us to see the innocence in others, which can help us let go of our judgments and frustrations.
And it reminds us that we're all interconnected. We're all just trying to do the best we can.
Speaking of focusing on the positive, strategy, hashtag 38, is such a simple but powerful way to strengthen our relationships. It's about expressing our love and appreciation for the people who matter most. Tell 3 people today how much you love them.
In the busyness of life, it's so easy to take our loved ones for granted. Carlson encourages us to make a conscious effort to express our love and gratitude regularly.
It could be as simple as saying, I love you, writing a heartfelt note, or just doing something thoughtful for someone.
When we express our love, it strengthens our bonds and creates a more positive and loving environment, and it reminds us of what's truly important in life.
Okay, this next one is all about humility. Strategy, hashtag 39, practice humility. It's about letting go of our egos and recognizing that we don't always have all the answers.
When we're attached to being right all the time, it can prevent us from learning and growing.
Carlson suggests that we practice being open to different perspectives and admitting when we're wrong.
It's about embracing our imperfections and remembering that we're all works in progress.
When we can let go of the need to be perfect, it frees us to be more authentic and compassionate. I love that.
Now, here's one that can really simplify our lives. Strategy, hashtag 40. When in doubt about whose turn it is to take out the trash, go ahead and take it out. It's about letting go of those petty arguments and choosing peace over being right.
That's so true. When we're constantly keeping score and trying to prove that we're doing more than our fair share, it creates so much unnecessary stress and resentment.
Carlson suggests that we adopt a mindset of generosity and service.
It's about contributing to the well-being of our households and relationships, rather than getting caught up in who's doing what.
Exactly. When we can let go of the need to be right, it creates more harmony and peace in our homes.
Okay, I'm ready for another perspective shift. What do you have for us?
How about this? Strategy, hashtag 41, avoid weatherproofing. It's about letting go of the need to fix everything and everyone around us.
I'm not sure I follow. What do you mean by weatherproofing?
Well, Carlson uses the metaphor of weatherproofing our homes to illustrate this concept. Just like we seal up cracks and leaks to protect our homes from the elements, we often try to fix the perceived flaws in our relationships and our lives.
Ah, I see. We try to control everything and make it perfect.
Exactly. But when we're constantly focused on what's wrong, we miss out on all the beauty and joy that already exists. Carlson encourages us to shift our attention from what we want to change to what we appreciate and enjoy.
Because when we focus on the positive, it creates more peace and happiness in our lives.
Now, this next one is a simple but powerful practice for inviting more love into our lives. Strategy, hashtag 42, is spend a moment every day thinking of someone to love.
It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we're grateful for.
Carlson suggests we start each day by thinking of someone we love and sending them positive thoughts. It could be a family member, a friend, a pet, or even a stranger.
When we focus on love, it opens our hearts and makes us more receptive to receiving love in return.
It's such a simple but powerful practice that can transform our relationships and our lives. Okay, now for a strategy that can help us overcome limiting beliefs. Strategy, hashtag 47, argue for your limitations, and they're yours. It's about recognizing that our beliefs shape our reality.
When we believe we're limited, we create self-fulfilling prophecies.
Exactly. Carlson encourages us to challenge our limiting beliefs and replace them with empowering ones.
It's about recognizing our own potential and believing in our ability to achieve our goals.
When we believe in ourselves, we open up a world of possibilities.
I love that. Believing in ourselves is so important.
And sometimes we need to remember that we're not alone in this journey. Strategy, hashtag 48, reminds us to remember that everything has God's fingerprints on it.
That's such a beautiful thought. It's about recognizing the divine spark in all of creation.
Carlson encourages us to cultivate a sense of awe and wonder for the world around us.
It's about seeing the interconnectedness of all things and appreciating the beauty and complexity of life.
When we connect with that sense of the sacred, it brings a sense of peace and meaning to our lives.
Sometimes I think we forget to appreciate the simple miracle of being alive.
It's so true. Now, let's shift our focus back to relationships for a moment. Strategy, hashtag 49, encourages us to resist the urge to criticize.
It's about realizing that criticism is rarely helpful and often hurtful.
Because when we criticize others, it creates defensiveness or resentment. Carlson encourages us to practice acceptance and understanding instead.
It's about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes and we're all on our own unique journeys.
When we can let go of the need to judge and criticize, it creates more harmony and peace in our relationships. And that leads us to another strategy that can help us become more open-minded. Strategy #52. Search for the grain of truth in other opinions.
It's about realizing that there's often some validity in different perspectives, even if we don't agree with them.
When we're attached to being right, it can prevent us from learning and growing. Carlson encourages us to approach different opinions with curiosity and a willingness to learn.
It's about expanding our understanding of the world and recognizing that there's often more than one right answer.
And when we're open to different perspectives, it enriches our lives and helps us connect with people who are different from us.
Okay, here's one that might make us think a little differently about change. Strategy, #53. See the glass as already broken, and everything else too. It's a Buddhist teaching that encourages us to accept the impermanence of all things.
When we're attached to things staying the same, we set ourselves up for disappointment and suffering. Carlson reminds us that everything in life is in a constant state of flux. Nothing lasts forever.
So instead of clinging to the past or worrying about the future, we can practice being present in the moment and appreciating what we have while we have it.
That's a great way to put it. And when we accept the impermanence of life, it frees us from the fear of loss and allows us to live more fully in the present.
These are some really powerful ideas.
And here's another one that can help us communicate more effectively. Strategy, #55, is breathe before you speak. It's about pausing and collecting our thoughts before we react.
We've all been there. When we react impulsively, we often say things we regret.
Carlson suggests that we take a deep breath and consider our response before we speak.
It's about choosing our words carefully and speaking with intention.
When we communicate mindfully, it helps us avoid misunderstandings and create more harmonious interactions.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, here's a strategy for navigating our emotions with more grace. Strategy, #56. Be grateful when you're feeling good and graceful when you're feeling bad.
It's about accepting the full range of human experiences.
When we resist our emotions, it creates more suffering.
Carlson encourages us to practice gratitude when we're feeling good and to be gentle with ourselves when we're not.
It's about recognizing that our emotions are temporary and they don't define who we are.
When we can accept our emotions without judgment, we can experience them more fully and move through them with more grace.
Now, who doesn't love a mini vacation? Strategy, #57, is to take a mini vacation throughout the day.
That sounds amazing. We all need those moments to recharge our batteries.
It's about finding those small ways to escape the stress of daily life. Carlson suggests taking mini vacations throughout the day to refresh and refocus.
It could be as simple as taking a few minutes to listen to music, meditate, or take a walk.
Exactly. It's about creating those moments of peace and tranquility in the midst of our busy lives. When we take time to relax and recharge, we're much better equipped to handle the challenges that inevitably come our way.
Those moments of peace can really make a big difference.
Mm.
Okay, let's dive into another strategy.
How about this one? Strategy, #59, adopt a child through the mail. It's about finding ways to connect with and support children in need.
That's a great idea. Carlson suggests considering sponsoring a child through an organization like Children International or Save the Children.
It's a way to provide financial and emotional support to a child who might not otherwise have access to basic necessities.
It's a beautiful way to make a positive impact on the world.
Now, this next strategy can be really helpful for becoming more self-aware. Strategy, #60, is to be aware of your psychological oxygen. It's about recognizing the people and activities that energize us and those that drain us.
Carlson suggests we pay attention to how we feel when we're around certain people or engaging in certain activities. Sometimes it's so clear that certain people or situations just zap our energy.
It's so important to be mindful of that. When we surround ourselves with positive influences, it nourishes our souls and helps us thrive.
And when we avoid negative influences, it protects our energy and prevents us from feeling depleted.
Speaking of energy, let's talk about overcoming procrastination. Strategy, #61, put your to-do list away. It's about recognizing that sometimes the best way to get things done is to just start doing them.
I think we can all relate to that. Sometimes I get so overwhelmed by my to-do list that I just end up feeling paralyzed, and I don't get anything done.
When we're constantly staring at those long lists, it can feel overwhelming and make us want to avoid everything. Carlson suggests putting those to-do lists away for a while and just focusing on one task at a time.
It's about breaking down those large tasks into smaller, more manageable steps And just taking action.
Exactly. When we focus on taking action, it creates momentum and helps us make progress. And that leads us to another strategy for savoring the present moment. Strategy, hashtag 62. Focus on what you're doing rather than what needs to be done.
It's about being present in the moment and enjoying the experience.
It's about being present in the moment and enjoying the experience. I think we're all guilty of constantly thinking about what needs to be done next, and we end up missing the beauty and joy of what's happening right now.
So true.
Carlson wants us to cultivate a mindset of mindfulness and appreciation.
It's about paying attention to the details of our lives and finding joy in the simple things.
When we focus on the present moment, life becomes more rich and meaningful.
Okay, so many of these strategies are about managing our minds and our thoughts. What does Carlson have to say about overcoming fear?
Strategy, hashtag 63. Don't try to talk yourself out of your fears. It's about recognizing that fear is a natural part of the human experience.
When we try to ignore or suppress our fears, they often just become stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
Carlson suggests acknowledging our fears without judgment and taking action despite them.
It's about facing our fears head-on and realizing that they often lose their power when we do.
And that leads us to strategy, hashtag 64, for cultivating inner peace. Live in the eye of the storm.
That's such a powerful image.
Right.
It's about finding calm amidst the chaos of life.
Exactly.
So, like, instead of freaking out when things go wrong,
Yeah.
we can practice staying centered and grounded, even when it feels like everything is falling apart around us.
Exactly. Carlson suggests we view these challenging situations as opportunities to practice our mindfulness and equanimity. When we can maintain our inner peace, it helps us navigate those tough times with more grace and wisdom.
I love that. It's about finding that strength within ourselves to weather the storms.
And sometimes that means being flexible. Strategy, hashtag 65, reminds us to be flexible with changes in your plans. Let's be honest, things don't always go according to plan, do they?
Nope, not at all. And when I'm really attached to my plans, it can be so disappointing and frustrating when things have to change.
We've all been there. But Carlson wants us to cultivate more flexibility and adaptability in our lives.
It's about being willing to adjust our course and embrace those unexpected twists and turns.
And sometimes those unexpected detours lead us to some pretty amazing places we never would have found otherwise.
That's a great way to look at it. Okay, what else can help us navigate those unexpected changes?
Well, strategy, hashtag 66, offers a great perspective shift. It's called Think of What You Have Instead of What You Want.
It's about focusing on gratitude and appreciating what we already have.
Exactly. Because when we're constantly focused on what we want, we miss out on all the beauty and abundance that's already present in our lives. We can get so caught up in that grass is always greener mentality that we forget to appreciate the green grass right under our feet.
That's so true. It's easy to take things for granted when we're always looking for something more.
Carlson encourages us to appreciate the gifts we have and practice gratitude for them. And that can be as simple as taking a moment each day to reflect on the good things in our lives.
I've found that even just keeping a gratitude journal can make a big difference in my overall mood and outlook.
It's a powerful practice. Now, let's talk about managing those pesky negative thoughts. Strategy, hashtag 67, is all about learning to practice ignoring your negative thoughts.
Sometimes it feels like my brain is a nonstop factory of negative thoughts.
Yeah.
It can be so exhausting.
It's about realizing that we don't have to believe everything we think. Those thoughts are often just fleeting impressions, and they don't always reflect reality.
So how do we stop believing those negative thoughts? They feel so real sometimes.
Carlson suggests practicing observing those thoughts without judgment and letting go of the ones that don't serve us.
It's like hitting the delete button on those negative thoughts.
Exactly. It's about choosing to focus on positive and empowering thoughts instead, because when we manage our thoughts, we manage our emotions and our overall experience of life.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's a good reminder that we have more control over our thoughts than we sometimes realize.
Speaking of learning and growing, strategy, hashtag 68, reminds us to be willing to learn from friends and family.
It's about recognizing that the people closest to us often have valuable insights to offer.
Sometimes it's easier to see our blind spots when they're pointed out by someone who loves us.
I know that's true for me. My friends and family are often the ones who can help me see things more clearly when I'm stuck in a negative pattern. It's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in the middle of it.
Exactly. And it takes humility to be open to that feedback, but it can be such a gift.
It's about being humble enough to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and that we can always learn and grow from others.
And, when we're open to learning from the people around us, it enriches our lives and helps us become better versions of ourselves.
That's such a great point. But I think we could all use a little more happiness in our lives. What does Carlson have to say about that?
Strategy, hashtag 69, reminds us that happiness isn't some far-off destination we need to reach. It's more about how we choose to experience the present moment. Be happy where you are.
That's such a simple but powerful idea. We don't have to wait for everything to be perfect before we can allow ourselves to be happy.
Exactly. When we're constantly chasing happiness, we miss out on the joy that's available to us right now.
Carlson encourages us to appreciate the present moment and find reasons to be happy right where we are, no matter what our circumstances may be.
It's about cultivating a mindset of gratitude and contentment.
It's like choosing to focus on the good, even when things are tough.
Exactly, because when we choose to be happy, we create a more positive and fulfilling life. And that brings us to another strategy for creating a more positive and fulfilling life. Strategy hashtag 70 reminds us that you become what you practice most.
It's about realizing that our actions shape who we are.
Right.
Our habits define us.
Right. When we repeatedly engage in positive behaviors, we develop positive habits and become better versions of ourselves.
So it's like if we want to be more patient, we have to practice patience. If we want to be more kind, we have to practice kindness.
Carlson encourages us to be mindful of our actions and to choose those that support our goals and values.
It's about cultivating habits of kindness, compassion, patience, and peace.
And when we practice those qualities, we become more loving and peaceful people.
Okay, we've talked a lot about managing our thoughts and emotions. What about quieting the mind? I think that's something a lot of us struggle with.
Strategy hashtag 71. Quiet the mind addresses that directly. It's about recognizing that our thoughts can be a source of stress and anxiety.
When our minds are constantly racing with thoughts, it can be really hard to find peace and clarity.
Carlson suggests practicing techniques like meditation, deep breathing, and mindfulness to help quiet those racing thoughts.
It's about creating that space for stillness and peace within ourselves.
When we can quiet our minds, we create a more peaceful and harmonious inner world. It's like finding that quiet refuge amidst the storm.
I love that imagery. What other strategies can help us find that inner peace?
Well, strategy hashtag 72 is all about trusting our intuition. Take your inner compass with you.
It's about recognizing that we all have this inner guidance system that can help us make wise decisions.
Carlson encourages us to listen to our inner voice and trust our gut feelings.
Because sometimes we just know what's right for us, even if we can't explain it logically.
Exactly. When we trust our intuition, we make decisions that are aligned with our true selves.
Okay, so many of us struggle with perfectionism. It can be so hard to let go of that need for everything to be perfect. What does Carlson have to say about that?
Strategy hashtag 73. Don't attach your happiness to outcomes. It's about realizing that we can't control everything that happens in life.
When we tie our happiness to specific outcomes, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. Because, let's face it, things don't always go the way we want them to.
Carlson encourages us to focus on the process rather than the outcome.
It's about enjoying the journey and letting go of that need to control the destination.
And you know what? When we detach from outcomes, we become more resilient and adaptable. We can roll with the punches a lot better.
That's a great point. Okay, I'm ready for another strategy. What do you have for us?
Let's lighten things up a bit. Strategy hashtag 74. Life is a dance, not a marathon. It's about remembering that life is meant to be enjoyed, not endured.
I love that. We can get so caught up in striving and pushing ourselves that we forget to have fun.
Exactly. Carlson wants us to slow down, savor the experience, and find moments of joy throughout the day.
It's about cultivating a mindset of playfulness and appreciation.
When we approach life with a sense of lightness and joy, it becomes more fun and fulfilling.
That's a great reminder. Okay, this next one is something I think we all need to hear sometimes. Strategy hashtag 75 is, remember, you are more than your moods.
It's about realizing that our moods are temporary and they don't define who we are.
We can get so caught up in those negative moods, and it's easy to start believing that's all we are,
Right.
but it's just not true.
Carlson encourages us to observe our moods without judgment and to remember that they will pass.
It's about realizing that our true selves are much larger and more expansive than our fleeting emotions.
When we can detach from our moods, we become more stable and resilient.
Okay, let's talk about relationships again.
Strategy hashtag 76 is an interesting one. Choose to be married.
So it's about making a conscious decision to stay committed to our relationships even when things are tough.
Exactly, because let's be honest, relationships require effort and dedication.
They're not always easy.
Carlson wants us to view those challenges as opportunities for growth and learning. It's about choosing to love and support each other through thick and thin.
Because when we're truly committed to our relationships, we create that safe and loving space to navigate the ups and downs of life together.
Now, this next strategy can be so freeing. Strategy, hashtag 77. Don't take yourself too seriously.
It's about remembering that we're all human and we all make mistakes.
When we take ourselves too seriously, it creates so much unnecessary pressure and stress.
It's like we're constantly walking on eggshells, afraid to mess up.
Carlson wants us to lighten up, practice self-compassion, and even laugh at ourselves when we make mistakes.
It's about letting go of that need to be perfect and embracing our imperfections.
And you know what? When we can laugh at ourselves, life becomes a lot more fun and enjoyable.
I love that. Okay, let's dive into another strategy.
How about this one? Strategy, hashtag 78. Give up complaining.
Complaining can be such a bad habit.
It's a negative habit that drains our energy and creates a toxic environment.
When we complain, we focus on what's wrong and just create more negativity.
Carlson wants us to shift our focus to gratitude and appreciation instead.
It's about finding the good in every situation and focusing on what we can control.
Because when we give up complaining, we create a more positive and empowering experience of life.
Okay, this next strategy sounds a little mischievous. Strategy, hashtag 79. See what you can get away with. What does that even mean?
It's about recognizing that we don't have to be perfect and that we can let go of that need to control everything.
We don't have to follow every rule or do everything perfectly.
When we're constantly trying to control everything, it creates so much stress and anxiety. Carlson encourages us to experiment with letting go a little and see what happens.
It's about trusting that things will work out even if we don't have all the answers.
And you know, sometimes the most amazing things happen when we let go of the reins a little bit.
So it's like giving ourselves permission to relax a little and not take everything so seriously.
Exactly. When we loosen our grip on control, we create more space for peace and ease to flow into our lives.
That's a beautiful thought.
And speaking of peace and ease, let's revisit the mantra of the entire book, Strategy, hashtag 80. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's a reminder that most things in life are not worth getting upset about.
It's so easy to get caught up in the little things and make them bigger than they need to be.
When we sweat the small stuff, we create so much unnecessary stress and drama in our lives.
Carlson wants us to keep things in perspective and remember that most things aren't as important as we make them out to be.
When we let go of the small stuff, we free up our energy for the things that truly matter.
That's such a good reminder. We need to be mindful of where we're directing our energy.
Speaking of mindfulness, Strategy, hashtag 81, is all about choosing how we respond to situations. Choose to not be irritated.
It's about realizing that we have a choice in how we react to things. We don't have to let those little annoyances control our moods and ruin our days.
Instead of automatically reacting with irritation, we can pause, take a breath, and choose a more peaceful response.
It's like taking back our power. We don't have to be controlled by our emotions.
And speaking of choosing our responses, Strategy, hashtag 82, don't think about your partner's faults, can be a real game changer for relationships.
It's so easy to get caught up in focusing on our partner's shortcomings, especially when we're feeling frustrated or resentful.
Yeah.
But no one is perfect, right?
We all have our flaws. Instead of dwelling on what we don't like, what if we focused on appreciating our partner's positive qualities?
It's about choosing to see the good, even when it's challenging.
Because when we focus on the positive, it creates a more loving and fulfilling relationship. And it can also inspire our partners to be more loving and supportive in return. It's a win-win.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, what other strategies can help us gain some perspective?
Well, Strategy, hashtag 83, is a powerful reminder of the impermanence of life. Think of the statement, 100 years from now, all new people.
Whoa, that one really makes you think.
It's so easy to get caught up in the dramas of daily life that we forget our time here is limited.
Carlson suggests we imagine ourselves 100 years in the future, looking back on our lives.
Right.
What will we remember? What will truly matter?
It's a powerful way to shift our perspective and let go of the things that don't really matter.
When we remember that our time here is precious, it inspires us to live more fully in the present moment.
And it helps us to let go of all that small stuff that's not serving us.
Okay, what else do we need to let go of?
Well, I think we all need to lighten up a little bit, which is Strategy, hashtag 84. It's a great reminder not to take ourselves too seriously.
When we're constantly stressed and uptight, it takes all the joy out of life.
Carlson encourages us to cultivate a sense of humor and find ways to laugh at ourselves.
We need to be able to embrace the absurdity of life and not take everything so personally.
When we can lighten up, we create more space for joy and happiness. And speaking of creating space, strategy #85 offers a really helpful perspective. Adopt the "it's not my job to fix him" philosophy.
So this is about recognizing that we can't control other people.
Exactly. It's so tempting to try to fix the people we love, especially when we see them struggling or making choices we don't agree with.
I know I've definitely fallen into that trap.
But Carlson reminds us that everyone is on their own unique journey, and we can't force anyone to change.
It's about respecting their autonomy and allowing them to learn from their own experiences.
Instead of trying to fix them, we can offer our support and love without judgment.
That's a great reminder. Sometimes the best thing we could do is just be there for someone without trying to change them.
Okay, here's another strategy for communicating more effectively. Strategy #86 is the next time you find yourself in an argument, rather than defend your position, see if you can see the other point of view first.
It's about shifting from a mindset of defensiveness to one of understanding.
When we're so focused on defending our own position, we're not really listening to the other person.
We're not really open to understanding their perspective.
Carlson suggests we practice empathy and really try to see the world through their eyes. It's about understanding their motivations and feelings, even if we don't agree with them.
And that can be really hard to do, especially in the heat of the moment.
It takes practice, but it's so worth it. Because when we can see the other point of view, it often helps us find common ground and resolve conflict more peacefully.
And it can also deepen our understanding of the other person and strengthen our relationship.
Now, this next strategy is a good one for helping us define success on our own terms. Strategy #87 is to redefine a meaningful accomplishment.
It's about realizing that true success is not about external achievements, but about living in alignment with our values.
Because when we define success based on external factors like money or status, we often feel empty and unfulfilled, even when we achieve those things.
It's like chasing a carrot on a stick. We never quite reach it. Carlson encourages us to define success based on our own internal compass.
It's about living a life that feels meaningful and purposeful to us, regardless of what other people think.
Because when we define success on our own terms, we create a life that's truly fulfilling.
Okay, now let's talk about listening to our emotions. Strategy #88 is listen to your feelings. They are trying to tell you something.
It's about recognizing that our emotions are valuable messengers. They can give us important clues about what's going on inside of us.
Carlson encourages us to pay attention to our feelings and to explore what they might be trying to tell us.
It's about realizing that our emotions are not the enemy, but rather valuable guides on our journey.
When we listen to our feelings, we can make choices that are aligned with our true selves.
Now, we've talked a lot about being present in the moment. How can we get better at that?
Strategy #89 is a great reminder. Practice being in the now. It's about realizing that the present moment is all we really have.
When we're dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, we miss out on the beauty and joy of what's happening right now.
Carlson encourages us to cultivate a practice of mindfulness and to savor each experience as it unfolds.
It's about paying attention to the details of our lives and appreciating the simple things.
When we're fully present, we experience life more deeply and meaningfully, and it helps us let go of all those anxieties and regrets that often cloud our minds.
That's such a powerful practice. It's so easy to let our minds get caught up in the past or the future, but being present is where the real magic is.
I completely agree. And speaking of the present moment, strategy #90 reminds us that everything is temporary. It's called One More Passing Show.
It's about recognizing that everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing lasts forever.
Carlson encourages us to embrace the ebb and flow of life and find peace in the knowledge that this too shall pass.
It's about recognizing that both joy and sorrow are temporary states, and they'll eventually give way to something new.
When we accept the impermanence of life, we can let go of our attachments and find peace in the present moment.
That's such a beautiful and freeing idea. Okay, what other powerful ideas does Carlson have to share with us?
Well, this next strategy is all about cultivating love. Strategy #91, fill your life with love. It's about recognizing that love is the most powerful force in the universe.
Love has the power to heal, transform, and inspire.
Carlson encourages us to cultivate love in all areas of our lives, our relationships, our work, and our communities.
It's about choosing love over fear, kindness over judgment, and compassion over indifference.
Because when we fill our lives with love, we create a more beautiful and harmonious world.
I love that. Okay, now for a strategy that can help us overcome self-doubt. Strategy #92 is realize the power of your own thoughts.
It's about recognizing that our thoughts create our reality. Our thoughts shape our beliefs, emotions, and actions.
Carlson encourages us to become aware of our thoughts and to choose those that empower us.
It's about challenging negative thoughts and replacing them with positive ones.
It's so easy to get caught up in those negative thought patterns, but we really do have the power to choose more empowering thoughts.
Exactly. When we manage our thoughts, we manage our experience of life.
Okay, this next strategy might be a little challenging for our consumerist culture. Strategy #93. Give up the idea that more is better.
It's about recognizing that true happiness doesn't come from accumulating possessions or achievements.
When we're constantly striving for more, we never feel satisfied.
Carlson encourages us to cultivate a sense of contentment and appreciation for what we already have.
It's about recognizing that true wealth is not about material possessions, but about the richness of our relationships, our experiences, and our inner lives.
When we let go of the need for more, we can finally focus on what truly matters.
That's such a great reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in that more is better mindset, but it often just leads to emptiness and dissatisfaction.
Okay, I think this next strategy is a good one to wrap up this section of our deep dive. Strategy #94 is keep asking yourself, what's really important?
It's about regularly checking in with ourselves and making sure our actions are aligned with our values.
It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and lose sight of what truly matters. Carlson encourages us to make a conscious effort to prioritize the things that are most important to us.
It's about spending our time and energy on the things that bring us joy, fulfillment, and a sense of purpose.
When we're clear about our priorities, it makes it so much easier to make decisions that are in our best interests.
Okay, this next strategy is all about trusting our inner wisdom. Strategy #95 is trust your intuitive heart.
It's about recognizing that we all have an inner wisdom that can guide us.
Carlson encourages us to listen to our intuition and to trust our gut feelings.
It's about recognizing that our intuition often knows what's best for us, even when our logical minds are unsure.
When we trust our intuition, we make choices that are aligned with our true selves.
Now, for a strategy that can help us find peace in the present moment, strategy #96, be open to what is.
It's about accepting the reality of our current situation, even if it's not what we want.
Because when we resist what is, we create suffering for ourselves.
Carlson encourages us to practice surrender and find peace in the present moment.
It's about letting go of our attachments to how we think things should be and embracing the reality of how they are.
It's not always easy to do, but when we can be open to what is, it creates more space for peace and acceptance to flow into our lives.
Okay, here's a strategy for simplifying our lives. Strategy #97, mind your own business.
So it's about realizing that we don't have to be involved in everyone else's drama.
Exactly. When we're constantly focused on other people's problems, it drains our energy and prevents us from focusing on our own lives. Carlson encourages us to set healthy boundaries and to focus on what we can control.
It's about recognizing that we're not responsible for fixing everyone else's problems, and it's okay to let go of things that are outside our control.
When we mind our own business, we create more peace and freedom in our lives.
That's so true. Sometimes we just need to step back and let others handle their own stuff.
And finally, to wrap up this section of our deep dive, strategy #100 beautifully encapsulates the essence of Carlson's message. Live this day as if it were your last. It might be.
It's a powerful reminder to appreciate the preciousness of life and to make the most of each moment, because we never know when our time will be up.
Carlson encourages us to live each day with intention and to focus on the things that truly matter.
It's about expressing our love to the people we care about, pursuing our passions, and living a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
When we live each day as if it were our last, we create a life that's truly worth living.
That's such a beautiful way to live.
It really is. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, I think it's important to highlight what makes Carlson's work so impactful. He doesn't just tell us to relax. He gives us practical tools to actually do it.
That's what I love about this book. It's full of actionable strategies that we can start using today to manage stress and create a more peaceful life. It's not just about theory, it's about taking action.
And it's about recognizing that peace isn't something we find outside of ourselves. It's something we cultivate within. Carlson helps us see that we have the power to choose peace, no matter what's going on around us.
It's about shifting our perspective, changing our habits, and choosing to focus on what truly matters.
And when we do that,
Yeah.
we create a life that is more peaceful, joyful, and fulfilling. A life that is truly worth living.
So you've got a toolbox full of strategies now for not sweating the small stuff. But here's a little challenge inspired by the book. What's one thing you've been putting off that you could do today to make your life more fulfilling? Something to think about and maybe even take action on.
And it's interesting how he ties all these strategies back to a really simple idea.
What's that?
It's that life is just too short to waste our time and energy on things that don't really matter.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stresses and forget to focus on what's truly important.
Exactly. Carlson reminds us that we have a choice. We can choose to sweat the small stuff, or we can choose to focus on the things that bring us joy, peace, and fulfillment.
It's like choosing between a life of stress and anxiety or a life of peace and ease. The choice is ours.
And it's not always easy, right? Life throws us curveballs.
Definitely.
But even in those challenging moments, we can always choose how we respond.
We can choose to react with stress and negativity, or we can choose to respond with grace and resilience.
And that's what I think is so empowering about Carlson's message. He gives us the tools to create a more peaceful and fulfilling life, no matter what our circumstances may be.
It's about recognizing that we have more power than we often realize.
Exactly. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. And when we choose wisely, we create a life that's truly worth living.